My name is Wendy Dao. I am the chairwoman for the Chinese Finance Association, DC chapter. I'd like to, on behalf of TCFA and on behalf of Georgetown Business School, our co-sponsor, warmly welcome Dr. Qi and his delegation from the Chinese Securities Regulatory Commission to visit the U.S. You have come far, and you have come to a lot of places. Dr. Qi and his delegation has visited Toronto, Boston, New York, and DC. So this is another stop, and then they have Chicago and LA on their trip. So DC welcome you, and I would like to also briefly introduce TCFA. TCFA is a professional network organization which is nonprofit purposes, established in 1994. The mission of TCFA is very simple: it's to serve as a platform for exchange of information and networking among finance professionals from the U.S. and from Asia and from, of course, from China. Since 1994, TCFA has served platform for the exchange events among finance professionals from China and U.S. for numerous occasions. And TCFA organizes annual conferences. And I, as an experienced TCFA event participant, I am very proud to say that the conference quality every year increase, and we are just every year eagerly anticipating to go to the conference. And I've listened to Dr. Qi's speech at the conference a couple times, and it's always one of the very few, very anticipated speech that I will wait for. And we are finally having him here in person, so we're very happy. And also, I'd like to recognize TCFA DC management team. My management team member, would you please stand up for our audience? And they are, I think some of them are at the, in the hallway still working. If you are in the room, please stand up for everybody to recognize you. We have Henry Chan right here. He's an operations officer. We have Richard Wang, who is the membership officer, and Rose Wang just stepped in. We are all professionals, and we serve as volunteers for TCFA DC. If you got the event information tonight, not directly from us, and you got forwarded the information, then I would encourage you to contact us and put yourself on our email list. Here's how to contact TCFA. TCFAglobal.org. That's where you get our information. We will announce all the events there. And also, if you want to be on the email list, get yourself on the TCFADC gmail.com. Next, I would like to introduce our co-sponsor, Professor Rina Agarwal. Professor Agarwal is a distinguished professor of business administration and finance, and here at Georgetown McDonald School of Business. She has served as interim dean for MIT's Sloan School of Business. She's an expert in policy and a lot of other matters, and have also served in a Securities Exchange Commission in the U.S. as an academic fellow. TCFA owes Professor Agarwal tremendous gratitude for co-sponsoring this event with us, for providing this state-of-the-art facility, and all this helpful staff and everything else. Thank you. Let's have Professor Agarwal.
Wendy, thank you so much. So good evening, and let me welcome you to Georgetown University and to the McDonald School of Business. We are delighted to co-sponsor this event with the Chinese Finance Association. I also want to welcome our GEMBA students here in our Global Executive MBA program. It's a program that we partner with our School of Foreign Service at Georgetown and ISADE, a well-known school in Europe. And I would like to welcome ICBC students. We have a training program going on in this building for ICBC, and so we have a number of participants from the ICBC program here today. So today's event is made possible by the help of a lot of people, and Chris Cormus, our Associate Dean for Marketing and Communications, and her team have helped put this together. And the Assistant Director of the Center, Laura Schofield, is here at the back, and Laura has helped to pull this together. So we are delighted to have this event, and Georgetown has really developed a very strong relationship, a partnership with China at so many different levels. We have an office in Shanghai. We have very strong relationships with Renmin, with Fudan, really a number of universities, Peking University in China, Tsinghua University. So we have a number of different partnerships with Chinese universities. Here we offer a major in Chinese and a minor. We have a number of summer programs that are taking place and study abroad programs that are linked with China. One of the things we do is every MBA student in our programs, whether it's part-time MBA, full-time MBA, global executive MBA, any of our MBA programs, they're required to do something called a global residency. And it's really about working on consulting projects with companies. And we've been doing residencies in Shanghai and Beijing for many years now, including with a number of financial institutions in China. So let me just tell you a little bit about the Georgetown Center for Financial Markets and Policy. And this center is located here at the McDonough School. And we provide, we believe, innovative and impactful thought leadership in global financial markets. So we hold a number of different sessions here, dialogues, conferences, and we're really able to bring the private sector, the policymakers, and academics to have important discussions. In the world of finance, the last 4 or 5 years has just shaken up the whole world, and we're really dealing with some critical issues that need to be resolved. And for good or for bad, a lot of the decision-making has moved to Washington. The global decision-making about finance has moved to Washington. I hope that'll change sometime in the near future, and it'll go away from Washington and away from the political environment to the financial markets. But whether we like it or not, it has moved here. And Georgetown has tremendous access to Washington. And I don't think of Washington as just the political capital of the United States, but I really think of Washington as the global capital. The IMF is here, the World Bank is here, the embassies are here. And so we're very well positioned at the center to provide what I feel is a void in financial leadership. It's not the CEOs of financial institutions that can really get up and say, this is what the strategy for a financial market should be. And there's a void there. And Georgetown is very well positioned to fill that void. And that's exactly what we are trying to do here at the center. So we sponsor original research on global market issues. We engage students on these issues. And just have tons and tons of different activities that are going on regarding these critical policy issues that we've got to deal with. Okay. So Georgetown has been at the forefront of playing a leading role in the creation and dissemination of thoughtful, rigorous, nonpartisan research and in the discussion of important policy issues. Now, China's financial markets are obviously of a great deal of importance to all of us, to the global society. I myself have visited China on several occasions. I visited the Securities Commission, the Shanghai Stock Exchange. And I guess in the last several years, I have worked personally with exchanges and securities commissions in about maybe 10, 12, 15 countries. Everything from the US SEC to NASDAQ, New York, Mexico, Brazil, Germany, Ecuador, Peru, India, so lots of them. And I've got to tell you, I was at your Securities Commission a few years ago, and I was absolutely blown. I have never heard anybody say that we are working on a 10-year plan for our capital markets. In no other country had I ever heard regulators, policymakers saying that we are working on a 10-year plan with the World Bank on our capital markets. For us, quite honestly, here at the SEC, it's been always about let's take care of yesterday. Right? Some problem has occurred, and let's try to fix it. To be fair, the US markets, financial markets, are extremely complicated, really huge. And so the Chinese markets have the advantage of starting anew and starting with a clean slate. And we don't have that advantage here. So it's always been about catching up. But I have said that so many times. This was the very first time, the only time I have heard any policymaker talk about we are trying to come up with a strategy for the next 10 years for our capital markets. So with that, let me introduce Dr. Xie Bin, Director General for the Research Center of the China Securities Regulatory Commission. It is a pleasure to have you here at Georgetown at the McDonough School. And Dr. Xie is the Director General of the Center. This is the think tank of the China Securities Regulatory Commission. Prior to his current position, he was a Deputy Director of the Funds Supervision Department of CSRC for 5 years, supervising the mutual fund industry and qualified financial institutions in Chinese capital markets. He joined CSRC in 2000 as a member of its Strategic and Planning Committee. This is a relatively new body compared to lots of other countries. So you were right there at the start, I would say, in many ways. Before joining CSRC, he was a partner of a New York-based venture capital firm. Prior to that, he worked with Goldman Sachs Asset Management and Paribas Capital Market in New York and London. He holds a PhD in economics from Tsinghua University, an MBA from Chicago, and an MS in biophysics from Rochester. From 91 to 92, he lectured physics at Tsinghua University, where he received his BS in physics. And in this day and age, physics and finance really go hand in hand. All the quant stuff that's going on, the people have physics and math background. In 2005, he translated The Great Game, The Emergence of Wall Street as a World Power, into Chinese, which became a bestseller in China and has been reprinted more than 34 times since that time. He's led a team from CSRC and the World Bank in drafting China Capital Markets Development Report. It really is the first of its kind. And I did not realize that he was the author of this report. I had been talking about this report for the last several years whenever I'm traveling anywhere. And so it's a real pleasure to welcome you, and we look forward to your comments.
Thanks, Rina, for your nice words and all the good compliment on the China Capital Market Report. We actually brought a few copies for you, the Chinese and English version. And it's really my honor to be here. We had a long trip, and we started from, as you mentioned, Toronto, and then I stopped by Rochester. I hadn't been back for 15 years. I was doing my PhD there in early 90s. And we went to Boston and New York, now DC, tomorrow Chicago, and then the day after tomorrow, Los Angeles. The purpose of our trip was threefold. Number one, we try to, because we're building a real think tank of CSRC. We were a think tank, but we were a think tank without resources. Now we have some resources. We have 2 billion RMB put aside as fund for this new organization. And so we try to understand how to build and manage, hopefully, good quality or world-class think tank. So we visited MBER, Brookings, Pearson, and the conference board, and SEC this afternoon, and we're going to see Rand the day after tomorrow. Secondly, we try to recruit some good talents, probably some of you. And thirdly, I think we try to seek strategic relationship with as many as possible, as many organizations as possible, probably Georgetown University. And the purpose of our mission to build a think tank is trying to better provide a policy recommendation for Chinese capital market report in light of the economic transition which China is trying to make for the next decade. So that's where I'm going to start my presentation. I'm going to go through those slides pretty quickly. Could anybody just turn that thing around a little bit?
I can run the slide for you.
What, this is how you do it? Actually, I was trying. My original plan was to speak Mandarin, and then I was told that there are a lot of American friends who are interested in Chinese market, so I had to switch to English. But still, there are some jokes I can only tell, or stories I can only tell in Chinese. It will be far beyond my capacity to translate those jokes into English. But anyway, that's where we stand. China, the second largest economy in the world, and the per capita GDP reached $4,300 year end of 2010. That's quite a famous, the middle income trap. And we know a lot of countries actually went through that period and that stage, and some of them couldn't make it. They were there after probably 100 years. They're still in that trap. I don't want to mention any specific countries, but it's interesting to know that to notice that Argentina and the U.S. were at this level 100 years ago. In 1913, the per capita GDP for Argentina and the U.S. were both $4,000, and we know where they are right now. So look at it, the differences. So where's China going from like $4,300? I think given all the achievements in the past 30 years in China, we have a lot of challenges, and it's not so surprising to see that a lot of countries couldn't make through the middle income trap. For example, China has serious problem of pollution, and also like energy inefficiency. To produce the same amount of GDP, China consume 2 to 8 times of what advanced countries or world average. And all in all, I think the most challenging problem is China. Most of the China's industries, they're at the low end of world production chain, and they provide a very low value added. And a very famous example will be Foxconn incident, in which the famous factory Foxconn, which assemble iPhone for Apple, there were 13 workers. Later, 16 commit suicide consecutively. I think that demonstrated the problems China is running into. Number one, it is very hard to leap forward, meaning that you have to how to transform the Chinese economy into a more like value-added industries from very simple products like shoes, buttons, all those things. Among the in the $360, that's the price for iPhone. Foxconn gets only 6.5, something like that. And I think that can partially explain why there were like 13 suicide, because there isn't enough profit margin for everyone. And I think also it is obvious that China, the expectation from the people has increased dramatically. which even exceed the economic growth. And I think that partially explains why a lot of countries run into middle-income trap. It is meaning that the expectation of the people has run so fast, it basically far exceed what the society or economy can offer. I give you one example in China. I don't know how to translate that. 在北京这个，大家知道拆迁啊，你们怎么说拆迁？ I think probably compensation for, if you tear down old buildings, you want to build new buildings, you have to compensate those residents. And the cost for one place in Beijing now is 120K per square meter. 1平米12万. And the people are still unhappy. Just imagine how much the social cost to run a country, a society in this stage. So it's kind of really challenging. I think the only way China can make it is to really improve the quality of the economy, meaning that we have to make the economic transition. To achieve that, I think we have to, number one, consolidate the existing industry. Secondly, try to promote high-tech or higher value-added industries. And also, one shocking fact is that Foxconn is in Shenzhen, and which is kind of more developed cities in China. And after the Foxconn incident, the suicide incident, they were not welcome in the city. So they try to move to the inner land of China. And when they get to the inner land, you can see inner provinces. You can see how many people are standing in line and just to get a job there. So we have to keep in mind that China is still a very poor country. It's quite a big country, with a lot of diversity of income and the social development and economic development as well. So, how to do that? I think history can shed a lot of light into how we can do it. This is what happened in the history in the U.S. What's happening in China is very similar to two stages in the United States. One was the industrialization back in the late 19th century, and that's when U.S. had a lot of important industries like automobile, steel, oil refinery. Those are basically the most important industries in China today. So China is very much similar to the industrialization age of the United States 100 years ago. While also, U.S. had another important transition, which happened in the last 30 years of the last century, the high-tech wave. I think what China wants to achieve is to finish these two tasks within the next 30 years. Meaning that, number one, speed up the industrialization process. Secondly, if we can compete or promote some of the high-tech industries or strategic industries for the next 30 years, that would be great. And we know that history told us that the U.S. capital market play a major role in both stages. And Rina just mentioned the book I translated. It has been actually reprinted not 34 times, 47, and an update. And you can easily download that book from internet. 我鼓励盗版啊。And the question is, why do Chinese people love to read the history of U.S.? Because I think there's a lot we can learn from the U.S. history. And the basic economics is always the same. I think the success of the U.S. economy has been, and probably still is, to allocate resources through a market instead of some powerful organization like a commercial bank. So also, I think from day one, the good thing about U.S. is that it started with free market economy, and ever since. So that's something I think China should learn. Even the market's not perfect, because human beings are not perfect. And even though it's not perfect, we haven't found anything better than our market, I think. So that's a major lesson I can get from the U.S. history. And this table shows, the concentration ratio, right? Can I see? Just to illustrate how fragmented Chinese industries are in comparison to most advanced countries. So we do have some serious merger acquisition activities to be carried out. And this is like what happened in the U.S. history, where when you had tens, if not hundreds, mergers acquisitions in every single industry back in 1900, and but a lot of them happen in the capital market, through the via the investment banks. But in China today, it is very hard to carry out any merger acquisition because you run into a lot of obstacles and resistance. But nevertheless, they're going to happen. And so you can expect a lot of merger acquisition activities in the next decade. And there will be enough businesses for securities firms in China, which is the Investment Bank of China. And also, I think U.S. showed China a very good example of how to build an innovative economy. Essentially, it's the marriage of capital and technology. And even after the crisis, we have seen that the differentiation, two differentiations. Number one, the differentiation between emerging economies and advanced economies, meaning that, thanks a lot. Even with the slowing down, I think China and India still had a quite decent growth for the first quarter, and probably more difficult for the second quarter, though. But the advanced economy, you can expect that kind of relatively slow. And I think the second differentiation is probably more striking, is that the differentiation between Europe and the US. Even though the crisis happened in the States, 3 years later, it is the European economy which collapsed. I think it again shows that the US economy is more resilient. I think partially it is due to the financial structure. The US financial structure is dominated by banks, whereas in the States, it's market-oriented. So that's what China should take from those trends. And more importantly, I think we have seen that a lot of new industries emerged after the crisis. We have seen Apple, which is leading the cell phone industry, and also Facebook. It shows that the social network can become a strategic industry. And so China has learned from all those, and we have pretty much made up our mind to develop a market-oriented financial structure, if possible. So here we are. This is the market, which started about 22 years ago, almost from scratch, from ground zero. And it was the paramount leader, Mr. Deng Xiaoping, who actually kicked off the market. And the ideology in China back then was such a big issue. He basically said, let's forget about capitalism or socialism, and let's just try it. and it became an irreversible process. And because a market has its life. And after 2 decades, it's pretty much the largest emerging market in the world and second largest market in the world, sometimes third, depending on the index. And I think 2 driving forces behind the growth was, number one, the economy has grown steadily, and now the second largest economy. When the economy gets to a certain size, the financial needs is just natural. Secondly, I think China has seen the course of liberalization, the financial markets, which provide a lot of power for the market to grow. And just as I witnessed the second half of the entire process. I went back to China year 2000, and before my returning to China, my ex-government colleagues were quite surprised to see that I was going back to China, which they think was not much different from Africa and by then. And they say, why do you have to go back to China? I say, I'm going back to join the CSRC, which is the SEC equivalent of China. And they were shocked to know that China actually had a capital market. That was 12 years ago. And now if you go to New York, you would notice that every Wall Street trader wake up in the morning, the first thing they need to do is to look at how Chinese market did last night. Because that single market was the largest market live when the US market was down. So this is very striking, the progress. And along the road, I think this market has really transformed the Chinese economy and the society as well. On the economy side, you can see that these are the top 15 companies which are among the Fortune 500 Chinese companies. And well, quite a lot of them are SOEs. And there's been a lot of criticism on how big and powerful the SOEs are in China. But a few years ago, everyone in the world was worried that Chinese SOEs were going to be bankrupt. And in the year of 2005, ICBC, well, the World Bank went to China to review China's commercial banks. And their remark on ICBC, which in Chinese is 爱存不存, and was like technically bankrupt. And they said, well, it's been bankrupt for 3 times because the state injected capital for 3 times. Now we know that ICBC is the largest bank in the world. And I think the major difference which was made was it got listed in the past 5 years. So it's been transformed entirely. It has to improve corporate governance and transparency and for the information disclosure, et cetera, et cetera. So it has been transformed into a modern bank. I'm not saying it's the best bank in the world. I mean, it has a lot of room to improve, but definitely a lot of progress has been made. The same for a lot of Chinese private companies. They got listed and they expanded very quickly and become very big, like Suning Electronics, everybody knows. And also, I think it changed the Chinese society greatly. You can see that we have about 140 investment accounts nowadays. And behind every single account, you would have at least 3 to 4 family members, right? So if the market goes up or drops, it's going to affect probably 1/3 of the population in China. And a lot of people learn improve their financial literacy because they began to invest. And I would call it economic democracy in a way. Nevertheless, I think the market is very much underdeveloped. Here I'm showing some stats. We know that US and the UK are like market-oriented financial system, and Japan and some other countries, they're like bank-dominated financial system. Let's pick China and Japan. You would find that the bank asset, the percentage of bank asset in financial system in China is even higher than Japan. It's about like 80-20, the bank versus the capital market. And the States, the US, is pretty much like 20-80. And Europe, similar to China, 80-20. And so you know that that can partially explain the problems for Europe right now. Also, I think the market structure is not satisfactory. If you look at the equity side, the US had this kind of pyramid structure. You have NYSE, which had probably 2,300 listings, and NASDAQ 2,700, OTC market, which is composed of both OTCBB and Pink Sheet. If you add them together, it's probably 9,000 companies. But that's not the full story. Below that, there's a gray market, and it's got probably 60,000. Not listing, probably price got called. And in China, the structure is pretty much reversed. You have this main board, 1,400 companies, small and medium board, 600. And GEM, the gross enterprises markets, about 300-ish. And OTC market is almost non-existent. So you're looking at a structure, it's very awkward or strange, because you would have more postdoc than high school kids in China. So that's not going to be sustainable. That's why we need to build more junior markets in China, meaning the OTC markets. And also the market culture. This is the part which is the hardest to improve because it might take years. And if you look at this chart, the turnover rates, usually it's an indicator of how speculative a market is. You can see that NASDAQ is about 340%, and China's Shenzhen Stock Exchange exceeds that. And the Korean market, well, probably one of the most speculative market in the world. Well, I don't know if we have Koreans here. China's Shanghai Stock Exchange exceeds Korean market. And that's not even the full story. If we go back to 2007, the world average was about 150%. But the turnover rates for China's two markets were respectively 927% and 987%. So this is probably the most speculative market in the world because it's driven by almost entirely by individual investors. And we know that liquidity is vital for a market, but only to a certain extent. If you have too much liquidity or a speculation, then the market's going to crash someday. In the Asian financial crisis back in 1997, Korean market was the first one to crash. So we have a lot of work to do. Particularly today, China run into, I call it a structural problem, as demonstrated by the Wenzhou dilemma. for those who you don't know, Wenzhou is one of the most, I mean, the wealthiest, one of the most wealthy city in China. Whereas at the same time, the companies, small and medium companies in the city, they got bankrupt because they don't have access to capital. That's very strange, right? Peculiar, because the financial market is underdeveloped, particularly the capital market. So those money would be speculating on many and many other things, like houses or real estate, and also anything. Sometimes cotton. Can you believe that? And so, well, I have to say this in Chinese. 中国人去这个温州人去炒房，去这个澳大利亚啊。现在澳大利亚人已经买不起房子了啊。And well. Now Australian people cannot afford any houses. That's what I heard. And they speculate on cotton and probably onion. Yeah. You would be wondering why, because it's they thought it was the price were probably going to go up, and eventually it collapsed. Please, well, I think the problem of Wenzhou is just not so atypical for China. For China to reach this stage, the past 30 years, one thing China has been short of was money. Now China has some money, but those money cannot find the investment vehicle or any channels. So we need to provide a platform, or we have to bridge the gap. So that's the first thing on our agenda, which is to build more channels of access to capital for enterprises. So aside from the main board, the small and medium board, and the gem market, we have to build the third board, and the bond market, and probably the fourth board, which is like regional exchange or quasi exchange, if you will. And also we have to promote a private equity / venture capital business in China to provide funding for small and medium enterprises. Once we establish all those channels or platforms, we have to make sure they are being well regulated. Make sure they're fair and transparent. And well, if you cannot be perfectly fair and transparent, you want to make sure the transparency and fairness get improved day by day. And excuse me, you also have to improve the mechanism of investor protection. So we're trying to encourage companies to pay out more dividends. It is a business decision. We don't try to force them to do it. But in a market which is kind of less transparent, it's probably good for some of the companies to provide more dividends for the investors so that they feel safer. And also we try to build and improve the delisting mechanism. And lastly, we try to develop long-term institutional investors. We try to synchronize the development of pension system and the development of capital market. And or the China's version of 401k plan, which was implemented back in early 80s in the United States, which turned out to be a huge success. And in doing all those things, obviously you're going to run into a lot of challenges and obstacles I think we should always remember what Mr. Deng Xiaoping taught us 30-some years ago. He is truly a wise man. He said, first, don't be afraid of making mistake. Secondly, if you see problem, fix it. So very simple. 所以我说你们这个留学生出来留学啊，这个sorry， 学习西方的知识很重要，应该同时带一本邓小平文选。I think this market is going to transform the Chinese society and the economy further in the decades to come. Excuse me. You can see from the US experience in the past century, 3 companies reached size of $100 billion RMB, $100 billion market cap. One was GE. It took GE 100 years, and excuse me. Microsoft. It took Microsoft 25 years, and Google 7 years. So we're living in an increasingly competitive world, and Chinese companies, they have to be able to have access to capital market, to be able to compete in an ever competitive, ever growing world marketplace. And I think it's also a vital tool to build harmonic society, as we call it. It's very obvious in the past 30 years. This is a regression between the average American individuals, their 401k account versus the Dow Jones index. And you can see the correlation turn out to be positive, and 98%, amazingly. This is what we need to do in China. We need to synchronize the pension development pension system with the capital market, so that the majority of Chinese people can become the shareholder of Chinese economy. 我讲两句中文吧。我们小时候读过一个课本啊，叫什么？叫这个半夜鸡叫啊，你们都还记得吧？讲的是这个周扒皮和高玉宝的故事。我后来这个搞了很多年金融之后啊，某一天突发奇想，我说这个周扒皮要是给高玉宝做一个股权激励的话，会怎么样啊？可能高玉宝自己3点半就爬起来了啊，周扒皮不用半夜鸡叫了。That's some old Chinese story, so never mind. Then the power engine of Chinese economy. And for a lot of people in the West, it's kind of hard to understand what's going on in China. I mean, why all of a sudden China emerged as the 2nd largest economy in the world, and is still going pretty fast. Of course, slowing down a little bit. If you go to China, I encourage all of you to visit China. You would find a lot of things in many small places. For example, I actually found this, it's actually an advertisement bulletin board somewhere in the suburb of Beijing, which I took my department for an outing 6 years ago. 就是我们去搞党建活动。那是个抗战争的遗址啊，非常有教育意义。焦庄户。And I found this bulletin board on which you would find 27 different pieces of advertisement. They're all, you know, the peasants. They actually transformed their home into restaurants, because it became once it became like tourist site, and so those are the, you know, advertisement. And I said to myself, I wouldn't be able to find any more competitive advertisement board in this world anywhere else. And I think if you go to China, you would find people like that in every single sector of the economy. The competition is just incredible. Because Chinese people, they're never afraid of competing with each other, and sometimes it's just too much. But I think that's the driving force for Chinese economy. And I have to tell this story in Chinese. 大家可能不知道，中国有2个年轻人，因为这个有这个什么pirate 问题啊，这个2个年轻人是组装这个 iPhone 啊，好像只花了200块钱人民币，如果不是100多的话。Well, I'm saying that some young Chinese guys assembled iPhone, and the cost was about 100 some RMB. So just imagine how much profit Apple has. And I think what's in China right now is that I think this picture also shows the problem of Chinese economy, that we never lack the spirit of competition, but I think we're a little bit short of the rule of competition. So we have to improve the rule for China, and that's why we need to build a capital market which can provide better rules for everybody to compete with each other in a more orderly way, and which can bring China's economy into a higher level. And you're also seeing that a lot of new development in Chinese economy. You're seeing 56 national science parks, all of them trying to emulate the Silicon Valley. And you're seeing a lot of venture capital and private equity businesses flourishing in China. And last year, Steve Jobs passed away, and he was very much respected in China, if not more respected in China than in the US. And everybody was asking, why don't we have Steve Jobs in China? Well, I always think that Steve Jobs is not a, like one-person hero by himself. Is probably the result of a good mechanism, because he had a team of 46,000 people. How to mobilize those people and work very hard to create something so magic like the iPhone. I think you need a stock option. And 我的意思说，做思想工作是可能是很重要，但是呢，这个可能不可持续啊。And what is it? Because we actually we didn't have the capital market 20 years ago, and this is a very famous city in China, Guilin, for our American friends who are going to visit China. I encourage you to go to Guilin. It's very beautiful. And now if you go to Guilin, you see something else. I actually visited Guilin last year, and I ran into a driver. Well, and I thought he was just an ordinary driver. So, and we were chatting. I said, "Well, you're, quite not old. It's like 56, 57. Why do you still, driving for a living?" And he said, "Well, I'm actually, I'm running a tourist company." And because there are so many businesses, I run out of drivers, so I'm driving by myself for you. Well, I said, great. And then we got to this place. We were trying to take pictures. And I didn't bring my camera, so I said, well, can we just use iPhone? And do you know how to use this iPhone? And he said, I know, because I own the distribution channel of iPhone in Guilin. 他是这个桂林的这个 iPhone 总代理。And then we on our way to the airport, and he all of a sudden asked me, how many companies are waiting in line for IPOs? Well, I said, what do you want? I mean, you want to list your small travel agency? He said, no, I actually invested in one PE fund. So one of the companies almost, qualified for IPO. So I want to know. Well, this is like an ordinary Chinese driver, And sometimes I think I run into something like a proverb. I don't know where I got it. Like probably American saying that every Chinese is a born capitalist. Well, I try to say something good about China, Chinese people, but you probably don't know that in Chinese, capitalist is a very bad thing. So I try to modify a little bit. I think the saying should be, every Chinese is a born entrepreneur. And that's so true after my trip to Guilin. And, well, this is an article from the Washington Post. What do we really need to fear about China? Which was last year, September 27th. Well, it's got this very nice picture. 它就这个照片是一个中国人带了一个京剧脸谱，藏在五星红旗后面啊，这个在这个。Well, let's speak English though. Well, I think the article. I don't think this article meant that our American friends are really worried about China or fear about China. I think they were just the article is trying to just to catch eyeballs and try to be entertaining, and it's very interesting to read this article though. It says, well, I mean China has really achieved a great deal in publishing scientific papers, and China will have probably more patents every single year after 2015. And the article said that, well, our decision makers they're getting worried, and he said, well, it's right, they get worried, but they probably worried about the wrong things, because most of the articles or the papers in China, they're either irrelevant or plagiarized, which I cannot agree, But in China, there's something which is very interesting, which recently happened. Actually, one professor plagiarized undergraduate students. Which is so encouraging, because I thought that the undergraduate students, they have such good papers these days. And well, what basically the article was trying to get to was that the most important thing is a lot of Chinese students, they're working out of campus. They start their own companies. It's very much like what Bill Gates or Steve Jobs did 25 years ago, 30 years ago. And he thinks that is going to change China. I think they're right, basically. They mentioned a place in Haidian, Zhongguancun, is in Beijing. It's a very small cafe. I encourage you guys to go see it if you get a chance to visit Beijing. In this cafe, you have like 20, 30 tables. Every single table, you have a startup company. Usually, there are like only 2, 3 people. and it's all like internet business. You know, they try to set up a shop on the internet, you know, etc. And what's more interesting is that you're seeing like tens, or if not, sometimes more than 100 angel investors who come to this place, and if they see some good teams, they just put up some money and invest in those companies. And well, 这个他们就跟钓鱼一样啊，很有意思。而且呢，你要说他们是天使投资者呢，实际上他们全是煤老板。I think they're using their money more wisely than before, and so this is what comes out of the Zhongguancun Science Park. In the year of 2009, the IPOs from Silicon Valley was 1, and from Zhongguancun Science Park was 23. Now, companies qualified for IPOs in the science park I just mentioned exceeds 1,000. And I think probably in 10, 20 years, probably we're going to see China's Apple or Steve Jobs. Who knows? Probably. And this is the prospect for Chinese economy. Mr. Deng Xiaoping said 30-some years ago. See how wise he was, you know. He said Chinese economic growth will be 2 stages, meaning 2 30 years. We have already finished the first 30 years, and we have been very, very much successful. He said we need another 30 years to come close to mid-advanced countries, mid-advanced country. And about 10 economists from Peterson Institute visited me 1 month ago in Beijing in my office. Their question was, well, for China's first 30 years, it was basically all simple goods, you know, easy to manufacture. And for the next 30 years, you need some serious high-tech industries, or probably more broadly, higher value-added higher value-added industries. I said, yes, you're right. And then their question is, then you need a very robust financial market or capital markets to support that transition. I said, sure. And then their question is, but your capital market is so far from satisfactory. And it's been there's inside trading. There's like a lot of speculation. Well, I think I cannot agree with them on every single word they said, but I think the market is not I don't think it can meet the economic and the social demands in China. So we need to speed up the reform. That's why we're trying to put together this think tank for CSRC, so we can better reform and develop this market. And it's going to be called a Beijing Institute of Securities and Futures. The primary goal is to promote reform in this capital market, as well as other financial and economic and social reform in China. And a key characteristics of this institute is that it can provide a competitive salary. It's very serious. For senior research fellow, we're going to offer more than 1 million RMB salary. And middle level, 500,000. And junior assistant, yeah, 300K. Well, which is kind of decent. 我想说的是什么呢？就是这个很多海归啊，很想回国，但是呢，很犹豫啊。这个我有很多朋友啊，这个我在纽约，我回去12年，我在纽约，我原来的朋友经常回来啊，这个回来休假呢不好好休假，天天找工作啊，这个肯定找不着，对吧？然后呢又回去了，过两天明年又来了啊，又转一圈，10年了啊。那我现在可以给你一个地方，让你去好好找工作，然后呢，生活还不错啊，一年几十万，在中国一年30万人民币，差不多相当于有30万美元啊，在这儿啊。当然，刨除房子以外啊。然后呢，你可以在那儿天天找工作啊，然后呢，你顺便业余啊，干点研究工作，我们不介意啊。We're very much open-minded， 因为呢，这个就你们来了以后呢，我们并没有那么狭隘啊，我们是这个为国家做事啊。你们回来了呢，这个哪怕是加入了什么这个什么中信证券 CSRC， 都是中国资本上的一部分啊，所以这个 we don't mind。I think it can also serve, what I was trying to get to, it can serve a talent pool for CSRC as well as the market, the financial institutions. So I don't mind them just coming back, stay for a while, like 1 year or 2, and go to the industry, which is fine. And our recruiting just started this week. And just a few projects to give you some idea what we're trying to study. It's going to be totally problem or solution driven. For example, we're going to study the middle income trap, how China can overcome that. And we're going to study the Eurozone crisis, how China can learn from the crisis. Also, how China probably can help with those, solving those problems in Europe. And we're going to try to develop a roadmap of financial reform in the next decade. And also technical problems like urbanization and municipal bond market development. And all those projects, all those research, the aim is trying to provide better strategies or more thought out solution for Chinese financial and economic reform so that we can have a sustainable growth for the next 10 years. And if China can reach $10,000 per capita GDP, China will be able to walk out of the middle income trap. And going forward, I think probably the task will be a little easier than the next 10 years. So with that, I'm going to close here, stop here, and if you have any question, you're welcome to bring out. Thank you.